Krista, welcome to Vissensa Talks. It's fabulous to get you on. I know we've tried to do it face to face, but lockdown's still in place. So here we all are with lockdown haircuts still and stuff like that. Fantastic. You're the first charity that we've ever had to onto Vissensa Talks. So we're really keen to get a perspective from the fourth sector there in terms of the problems that you've had during COVID and obviously the sort of stuff that you have to get up to. Not only, absolutely incredible stuff, and we're really pleased to be part of this with MyTime Young Carers. It's fantastic. But as the CEO, give us an idea, of MyTime itself, yourself in terms of how you got into it, and what's currently going on within MyTime.
Amazing. Thank you for the warm introduction, Steve. I'm Krista. I'm the CEO of MyTime Young Carers, and I've been in this post for probably just over a year now, having had a background in education. So I was a teacher for 13 years, geography teacher, assistant principal, vice principal, and then I got offered this opportunity to kind of come and work with this amazing charity. And young carers is something that I'd come across in my background in teaching, but it was something that in schools, young carers were a concept that no one really understood. No one really knew what challenges they faced, kind of who they were, and more importantly, how to identify or then support them. And so I had initially got involved in a conversation with MyTime a long time ago, talking about how important I thought that was, because as a classroom teacher, you need to know what those challenges are that those young people that you teach face, because then you can cater for them, work around them. And as I say, about just over a year ago, I got offered the opportunity to come across, and I left teaching, which was it was a big deal. It was really scary.
Yeah, I bet.
And then almost immediately we entered into the first of the COVID lockdowns. So it was really quite an experience, and it's been quite an interesting year to be a new CEO in a new field in COVID. But what I would say is it's given MyTime some incredible opportunities, and I think that we've really benefited from the lockdown, and I think the young carers that we work with have benefited from the improvement in the services that we offer. I'm not saying that their situations have been any easier, because there's been a huge amount of research about just how tough this has been for everybody, but also young carers. So that's a little bit about me, and then let me talk about my favourite thing, which is MyTime, which is it was a very small organisation that was founded back in 2013 by Matthew Barker and another group of trustees, and they own they were given a centre out in the Purbex, and we lovingly now call it our R&R retreat centre, which is a very glamorous name for a bunkhouse, just to be real. But essentially, they took that building on, and they looked at the last group of young people that had used the building, and it was a group of young carers. And Matt then went off and did some research, tried to find out who young carers were, and found out just about this incredible group of young people who, there aren't enough adjectives to describe young carers, but if I start with resilient, selfless, hardworking, and incredibly grown up, often beyond their years, that were providing essentially support to members of their family who were suffering with, might be a mental illness, might be a physical illness, a disability, could be a drug or alcohol issue. And the young carers were coming over to the centre every summer and kind of having this opportunity to have a break, to have a rest. And him and the other trustees went, this is it, this is what we should be doing, this is what this building should be used for. And then until about 2018 it was, and they used to run days out for some of the young carers, and they used to run these holidays over at the centre. And then they decided as a board that they wanted MyTime to grow, that they wanted to do more, because they could see the fact that actually, whilst this was having a really great impact, there were other elements of young carers' lives that weren't being kind of addressed or supported. And so, for example, young carers will underperform on average 9 grades lower than their peers at school.
That so stood out. The post that you put out for help, that we were really proud to respond to. There were a bunch of things that you said in that post, and after that post, just in terms of things like that stat, 9 times. I mean, it really does put into perspective the work that those carers are doing and the sacrifices that they are making, that will be with them for the rest of their life unless people like you get involved and try and help them. We should definitely reference this now, but the post that Steve's referring to is when we entered the 3rd national lockdown, we were still in a position where young people across the UK, particularly from disadvantaged backgrounds, didn't have access to IT, didn't have access to laptops. And we were inundated with requests from young carer support workers, from the schools saying, can you help us? Can you get these laptops to children? And Steve answered a call that I put out on LinkedIn, which was amazing, and helped provide us with a significant number of laptops, which arrived within sort of 3 or 4 days. We gave them to our motorbike couriers, who sent them out on their bikes, and then those young people were able to access their education, and that's enormous. But it comes back again into that statistic, 9 grades on average lower than their peers. And as I say, these are exceptional young people. These are young people who do so much for others, who put themselves at the end of a very long list of responsibilities that they have. But that's really impacting, as you said, Steve, their future life chances. Because if you don't get great GCSE grades, that impacts what happens next. That influences what happens at university. And for young carers at college, are 4 times more likely to drop out of college than they are to complete it. Wow. Due to the other pressures. Okay.
Yeah. And this is the thing, if you speak to them as a group, and obviously we spend a lot of time talking to the young carers that we work with, it's because their caring responsibility comes first. And they will say that over everything else, over hanging out with their friends, over their schoolwork. If the person they care for needs them, that's the priority. And so they are exceptional. But then to me, it's so unfair that that's then rewarded with potentially fewer life chances, less opportunity, and the chance to go on and really pursue a career or an interest or a passion that they really want to. Lots of young carers find themselves back in caring roles.
So somewhere in these interviews that we do on Vissensa Talks, we push the boundaries and try and be a bit controversial.
Go on.
I don't want to get into the political side of things because we could be here all day. But from what you've just said there, Krista, is what's wrong in this country that has people ignored. I'm going to say the word ignored. That's maybe a bit too harsh, but how do people with that type of potential somehow fall through the cracks, and there seem to be no voice, no platform for those people, other than the sort of charities and the great work that MyTime does? Why does it have to fall back on MyTime, and then you have to get so actively involved in what I would say is the rudimentary stuff? If you could fix the rudimentary stuff, you could then start getting on with even more amazing things for those carers. But actually what you've got to do is you've almost got to fix the plumbing, which is why we responded so quickly to that call, because for us it was like, how the hell can these people ever get started if they can't get connected? But you listen to the news and it's like, well, the government are giving 1 million laptops away, and you go, well, where are those million laptops? The BBC have got their program of send people old laptops. It's a great initiative. It's a shame that they didn't carry our story, by the way. But actually, at the end of the day, it's no good having an old laptop that's nearly broken sent to someone like you, because it's actually it just becomes a problem. You actually you need stuff that people can use, as you say. Get on a bike, send it to a carer, and actually the carer can use it. So what do you think? What do you think's gone wrong there, without killing the government and the opposition and the world leaders in general?
It's such a good question, and it's actually a conversation I was having just this morning. So I am also time with Bournemouth University, and the piece of work that I'm working on at the moment looks at exactly this kind of national level. What is it that's missing that has allowed this situation on the ground to develop for young carers? And it's really interesting. So it wasn't until about 30 years ago that there was even a word for a young carer. And it was the result of some work by Professor Sol Becker. And he started doing research into this kind of concept of young people that were caring for their parents. And his work was exceptional. And he started to kind of highlight the challenges that young carers faced. And as I say, this is 30 years ago. And out of that research, there has been the creation of policy and legislation, except the policy and legislation is exceptionally vague when it comes to young carers, and it's completely up for interpretation by different local authorities. So if you speak to different local authority groups across the UK, you will find that in some areas, as a young carer, you could access their services age 5 through to age 18. In another part of the UK, it might be age 8 through to age 18. It might be age 6, because it's not clearly defined. And then the other issue that you find is there is a significant lack of funding that is directed towards young carers. And so local authorities are doing the best that they can with what they've got. So then it's a cocktail, it's a nightmare really, because you've then got a legislation that is up for interpretation. You've got underfunding at local authority level. So they will do the bare minimum, but it's not because they don't want to, it's not because they don't care, they don't have the resources to do it. So you've got to make decisions, you've got to draw the line somewhere. And it's fascinating to see how that's kind of worked through the model, worked through into the system. And what happens a lot of the time is you have your local authorities and then you have charities that are filling that gap. And I know that's that is the UK. The third sector in the UK is so important and props up so many parts of society that without the third sector wouldn't function. So that's my answer to the question. But I think young carers are very easy to ignore because you said it, they're hidden. They are a hidden group, and at school they're hidden. And often they are caring for a parent or an adult in their family who might, as I say, have a physical disability, a mental health issue, might have a drug or alcohol issue. They are not often the people that are able to shout the loudest because they are marginalised groups within society. So there is a huge amount of work to be done. And what our kind of mission is to level the playing field. But we realise what a massive aspiration that is, because as you say, there's so much that needs fixing in the plumbing before we see what the outcome could really be.
Yeah, and I can see that certainly with the profile that you've got, and obviously, you coming and becoming CEO of MyTime, the profile in the social channels is getting better. So. I think you're certainly starting to make a difference, that's for sure. That has been incredibly insightful, and I'm sure the viewers will absolutely understand those type of pressures. So thank you for that, Krista. Let's talk about a little bit more about the sector itself in the next segment, but really appreciate your insight there.
Thank you.